Good morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audery Boyce-Noe with Ron Hetrick and Kevin Casey. And no more Kevin. So he is having major technical difficulties this morning, which is apparently why he just disappeared and why he was late, or we were late. So we'll just keep it moving. And how are you doing this morning, Ron?
I'm fine. I'm fine, coming off a vacation and you always have a couple days before reality comes crashing into your lovely time of Zen. So I'm still in that honeymoon phase.
Well, we're really happy that you and your mustache came today. So
The
thank you
mustache
very,
is
very
here.
much. Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because as our listeners know, I was in Italy for 2 weeks this in June, and talk about trying to hang on to your Zen. And I've done it so far. I mean, we're over a month. I've been home, and still, I'm like, okay, I'm still tan. All I remember is how amazing it was. It's all good. So there you go. Okay, so just to remind everyone, the reason I love Ron Hetrick, well, this is where it originally started, is because for years I kept railing on the BLS numbers and wondering what the hell. And Ron appeared in my life via Paul Hinman, by the way,
Yeah.
who we had on last week. And Ron used to run the division of BLS, Bureau of Labor
Supervised.
Statistics, supervised.
Running. Strong word, running. Supervised.
Okay, so,
Payroll. Survey,
okay,
yeah.
we'll discuss the semantics and the nuances in those two words
He was
later,
not the
but
head.
whatever. Okay, apparently there's some human out there somewhere who would take offense to the word run versus supervise for you, but that aside, he used to be in charge of those BLS numbers, or at least, supervise them.
One of them.
And so he explained to us how that all worked. He is now a labor economist with Lightcast. And it is just, I would love to say that I plan to have you here during Jobs Week as a labor economist. However, it's a fluke that this date popped up and this is the week. So there you are. Welcome back, Kevin. Nice to see you.
Yeah, that's a little challenging, but I can see you
Okay.
guys and you can see me, so that works.
We can.
Amazing.
And I'm really happy that you actually are showing more of your body on a day that you're actually not wearing gym clothes and
I
you
have
look
shorts
very
on. That's okay.
professional.
Swimsuit, shorts.
Oh God, there's a visual.
So,
Okay, so just for fun, just to remind everyone, since it is Jobs Week, we got Jolts today, which we'll talk about in a minute. Wednesday we have ADP. They're expecting 70,000 job creations, and Friday we'll have BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, my favorite. They're forecasting 80,000 or so job creations. Last I looked this morning, the 10-year was at 4.6288. And although that seems ridiculous, it's so much better than it was. So we're having a good day on the bond market. And hopefully me saying that out loud did not just jinx it. So keep me posted if you see something happen in the meantime. I thought it was interesting this week because Freddie Mac's weekly average rate was the sign of Satan, 6.66. You would think some soul at Freddie could have rounded up or down, maybe, but no. So, anyway, glad to see we're in the green today. And because we can't let a week go by without checking on things like oil, oil is back to 76 bucks a barrel. Prayers to your favorite deity that we continue that downward trend on oil versus the that we've been seeing that has not been fun. And I have a suggestion, which I do periodically depending on the subject, but I think we should turn this into a drinking game. And every time they tell us that we are close to a deal or that we have a deal, we take a shot. What do you say?
you'll die of liver poisoning.
Well, and if you knew
Well,
the
I just want
shots
to
liver.
I
know
like,
who's left to believe it anymore. There can't be any more people left, but Wall Street always reacts to it anyway, and I'm just like, wow. You
I
guys probably
know.
would blink if I put my hand in your face like a child does to another child in the back seat. I made you flinch. I made you flinch.
Exactly. It's like the market blows my mind. I'd like to, get them all together collectively, the market, and figure out what the heck. Like, why don't they learn the lesson? Why do they react to BLS? Why do they? It's so ridiculous. Anyway, meanwhile, the reason we're in the green today is that we had Treasury Secretary Scott Besson and Ann Paulson, who's the Philly Fed president, talking to the press, and they were saying nice things. they feel confident that inflation will continue towards 2% core PCE. We're on the right track. But again, last week at the Fed meeting, we had three dissents who wanted a 25 basis point hike: Beth Hammock, Lori Logan, and Neil Kashkari. And I'm telling you, they start talking and the market goes to HE double toothpicks in a hot second. And so it's just like this ping pong ball, which is interesting because I watched the Warsh comments at post Fed meeting where they decide, okay, we're going to keep the rates the same. He did not want to call it a pause. He said that it was okay, don't quote me exactly, but essentially a critical analysis of the current environment, and they made a decision. So it's not like they just went, let's just wait on this one. They really looked at it, hashed it through for 2 days, and he really liked talking about that. He says there will be no signals to the market, but the market doesn't seem to like that too much. And also, when you've got the Fed governors running around, blah, blah, blahing all over the place, that's not exactly zero signals to the market. So we'll see how this goes. He has done the commentary after the last 2 Fed meetings that he's presided over, and he said that he will continue to do this throughout the rest of the year, which is something because in the beginning he wasn't quite sure how he was going to handle that. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we're early days with him, and I like some of what he says. He's so adamant that we're going to get to that 2% target. We're going to get to that 2% target. And so the Dallas Fed trim mean came out the other day for June. It was previously 2.4%. Now it's 2.2%. That was something he had mentioned previously that he was interested in focusing on, perhaps. So, Ron, any thoughts on all this?
Not a whole lot. Just to say that I think the biggest fear, right, with him coming in was everybody thought he's a lackey. He's just going to do whatever is the bidding. And I don't feel like that's at all what we've gotten. I feel that he's actually a thinking human being who's looking at everything and trying to do what's best. So, I mean, I think that's encouraging.
Yep, I agree. And I feel like he's in the face of a lot of pressure, I would imagine, to do what he's told. He is signaled very clearly that he's going to take the information as it comes. And he also, I thought it was interesting too, because I listened to his comments from June and July. I mean, I listened to every Fed meeting, all the comments and then okay, I'm not explaining this well at all. Let me just, okay. I listened to him post meeting, as I do every post meeting. And he
so it's not just him.
It is not just one meeting. I listen to all the meetings, which, by the way, is important because when I hear somebody else describe the meetings, it is often very different than what I heard. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people will take those comments and they will make it into whatever their narrative is. And so it is important to go straight to the source to find out what the hell was actually said.
And it's not just Fed meeting minutes are that way.
The whole world is that way, as we've discussed ad nauseum around here. Yeah, for sure. So he very much seems to be the kind of guy who likes to work, collaborate, work as a team. He does seem to be interested in everybody's opinion. I mean, I get good feelings from him. We'll see. I mean, the jury's out. And also he's one guy who, not all the guys and gals. So he has one vote. Everyone else has a vote. And so he doesn't control the whole thing. He just is in charge of the statement and he coordinates it.
Isn't each Fed chair responsible for a different territory of the country, and therefore they would be seeing different numbers than, the Fed chair in San Francisco would be seeing something completely different that was the Fed chair in New York is seeing. So
yes, although when
that would affect their vote sometimes.
When you hear somebody like Beth Hammock speak, though, you wonder what she's seen because her comments are a little wackadoodle to me sometimes. So I don't know. Maybe someone else thinks she's right on the money. But all right, that's it. So we will take my drinking game suggestion under advisement and move it forward. We won't do it today, Ron, while we're on the air. Otherwise, we'd probably all be on the ground.
On a Tuesday for crying out loud. No.
It's Taco Tuesday. Come on.
Taco Tuesday. Okay, so let's talk about Jolts, job openings and labor
Yeah.
turnover. We got those numbers today for June. Why don't you walk us through it? This is your department.
Yeah, I mean, I think altogether a little unremarkable. I think as some others have pointed out rightfully, layoffs never really ever manifested like everybody thought they were going to, and now those numbers, are going down. Uh, Jolts went down a little bit today, but we're still 7.4 million, which historically speaking, like back in 2019, we would have thought that was an insanely high number. People keep wanting to compare it to when we were up to like 11 and 12. That's not right. Like 21 and 22 were mirages. So, yeah, I think you're still looking at a very healthy number. I think you're still, when you look at the amount of job openings versus the amount of people unemployed, it's still a 1-to-1 number. I don't know what else you'd want. Like that's a pretty strong number. I think where you're always going to have this is, what are people hiring versus the people who are very vocal about not being hired. And that continues to be a problem that we have in our social media ranks is, a lot of these professionals and such who've been out of work for a bit would have you to believe that the, entire labor market's coming apart, but it's really very specific segments like banking and such, which have really, really struggled since basically 22, and it's not showing any signs that that's going to ease up. Same with the tech industry, still kind of correcting for the overhiring they did, even though they're starting to show a little bit of life again. But I think all in all, the report, people are getting a little too stuck sometimes in the micro movements, whether it's this or unemployment claims, and failing to put everything into a historical perspective. And the historical perspective is still pretty good. Unemployment's still good. Excuse me, the JOLTS numbers still good. And you have to hold the JOLTS numbers in this kind of perspective of what's happening in our labor force right now, what's shrinking. So if the JOLTS number is kind of holding steady and your labor force is shrinking, then that kind of suggests, even more opportunity. But once again, where is that opportunity? And is that the kind of opportunity people want? Because I don't think people get excited, if it's fast food or if it's retail or things like that. People want the professional side to be hiring. And what's interesting is we did get a decent jump in like financial activities. Banking had a big fall last month, but it came back up. You know, Once again, though, I don't want to get stuck in the same thing I just said, which is I don't want to start looking at micro movements. I think we have to keep our pulse on this longer term trend.
So
Isn't
you said that the job openings and the unemployed are about 1-to-1. So to your point, are the people looking for jobs looking for the jobs that are open?
Yeah, and so this is where we've been having some issue, and that is, we are while we've been in this pause, interest rates have been high, and we've had a lot of capex going into things like data centers and infrastructure and things like that. There hasn't been a lot of professional hiring. We have actually started to see in recent months that's actually been changing a little bit. Even in IT, we've been starting to see more job postings and such in that particular industry after a long period of stagnation. So we are seeing some bit of life, but the hit was pretty strong. We partied in 21 and 22. We really partied, and we've been paying for it with a pretty severe hangover
Yeah.
ever since. But there's a point where you have to think, I mean, the hangover's got to start to end. Why would the hangover still be going on? And I still believe the hangover is occurring because we still have so much uncertainty. And the uncertainty is not from a job market side, the uncertainty is more from a geopolitical side. And I say that because we really don't have much else of an explanation for why companies are still hesitant to hire, given corporate profits are so strong. Traditionally, historically speaking, when corporate profits are this strong, you do see, this kind of investments into capital goods. Capital goods end up usually expanding a plant or expanding your product offerings, and you hire. But now what we're getting is you have these decent corporate profits. Maybe that's eroding for the hyperscalers, but that money's going into infrastructure instead of hiring because to them that's a safer bet to sell to their boards, to their investors.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't think it's a good sell to you investors if you start telling them I'm going to start adding a lot of headcount because I don't think anybody feels that good that the economy tomorrow is going to be much better than it is today.
Uncertainty is our enemy. That is for sure. We certainly see it on the bond market in our side of the
Sure.
business. I mean, it is rough, but I think we've learned over the years that everything is uncertain always. It's just what version of uncertainty is there? Because we think everything's ticking along, and then all of a sudden we invade Russia, or I mean Ukraine, or
No, that's next
we
week,
don't.
Russia.
Okay, hang on, give me a second. I got it. Russia invades
I got
Ukraine.
to check the
Yes,
news. Anything can happen. So here, I want to say something to what you just said because I think this is an important thing. Uncertainty in a consistent way becomes certainty. So if
right.
you're going to have tariffs going around every day, people kind of get used to that. But when
Yep.
your uncertainty introduces a new wrinkle, then it kind of resets the bar and you have to start your timeline again. And I think we had every indication about a couple months ago that, and I had heard this from a lot of banking economists saying that people were starting to get used to the tariff thing and they're like, we can go forward with business as usual. And the second that thing happened, we did the Iranian thing. Fuel is such a significant input cost, but it's even more than that. It affects tourism. It affects all these things when you have this kind of this instability. So a lot of industries get affected by it, but they don't know how much until amount of time goes by. And so every time we get an amount of time that goes by where we think we could figure this out, we introduce a new wrinkle, and that gets people kind of, okay, hold on. I was going to do something, but if I announce that now, that may go over really poorly. So let's wait a while and see how things are going before we do that again.
Well, where I was going with that too was, so first we had Russia invade Ukraine. Someone said I apparently started the drinking game already. Not quite. You're welcome. But then we have a banking crisis, or we have a debt ceiling crisis, or we have a government shutdown, or we have, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like you don't even know what's coming next, but it's going to be something. So almost what I've come to in my thinking after 300 years in this business approximately is you got to focus on what's right in front of you you have to know approximately what to expect coming in the
Yeah.
future, but expect the unexpected and really focus on people need a place to live. That's our focus. That should always be our focus. People need a place to live. How do we solve for that? Because nothing else is within our control. And we can't impact the rates. We can't do anything other than can we help somebody buy a house? That's
But
it.
we can help somebody, or at least for our clients, by knowing the trends. I think we lost
I know.
Ron
Well,
here.
either that or he's taking a nap. I don't know which.
Yeah,
Probably
I think
not.
you, Audrey, I think you put him to sleep. That's what it is.
Oh,
Uh,
that's really rude for the guy who shows up 5 minutes late. Whatever.
Listen, I'm having
Anyway,
challenges right now. I've got a cell phone where I'm doing this from, but I can see you guys down here. So I keep looking down and I look stupid on the screen because I'm looking down at you guys, but then I have to look up, which is
well,
not
you know what? I
comfortable.
just
But
like to say
anyhow,
I don't think you look as dumb as you think. So that's
oh,
good.
thank you very much. It
Yeah.
was quite the challenge getting in this morning.
Yes.
Oh, there he is. Now he's
Ah,
there. See,
Sorry.
there you go.
it's not just me with the technical challenges
Wow.
Wow,
today.
that is I'm hardwired into the wall. That was an odd thing. I think my
Do
whole
you know,
You,
immune.
do you know,
well,
Ron,
we were talking
Ron,
about you were sleeping. It was okay. We just let's just
I
sleep
I
then.
started to
yes,
hear the question. I'm like, I'm not answering this, and I just clicked out. But
that's
yes,
right.
okay.
Exactly.
I
Well,
heard something about housing and how are we going to fix this? Where
yeah,
did it
well,
go from there?
Kevin told me that I could put you to sleep. So that's nice.
That was
So anyway,
unfortunate. Sorry. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. That actually
we'll
did happen
see.
to me on a call earlier today.
Yeah.
Um, so housing, I want to talk about this a little bit. This is something I do comment quite a bit about in LinkedIn. I know it's not labor economics, but it's an aspect of things that is really significant. Now, my main interest in it is labor mobility, which is why I constantly am kind of looking at affordability. You know, you have so many parts of the country that would like to grow. Then you go look at their housing inventory and everything's, you know, $500,000 and all of the jobs that they're adding, you know, pay 60,000. And you go, well, that's not going to work. I think this is kind of the numbers that I've been kind of running. So the way the housing stock works, if we kind of look at our total housing stock right now, and we kind of do this on a per capita basis. If you look at everybody kind of over the age of like 25, which most of your home buyers are going to be, the housing stock per what I would call a family size unit is really unchanged in about the past 30 years. So if that's the case, we never really talked too much about a housing shortage a long time ago like we do now. And so what's changed in that matter is that the number of kind of houses that we call it affordable, what I would call them like right priced for the
Mark,
person who would be buying this particular thing. So if we look at that, if we do median household income, last year was around 83,000, but I don't think it's a really fair number. I think when we do it in a way that more matches who would be buying a home, it's more closer to like 100,000. So that
Hmm.
puts our strike price somewhere, in that 300, upper 300 range. To feel comfortable buying that house, especially if you felt a little uneasy about the economy or losing your job. So you'd be looking maybe around the 400 mark, and you still have this median sales price above that number. And I think if you look at who owns homes, I have this number written down. 27% of all of our housing stock is owned by people over 65. Back in 2000, that was 19%. So we have a lot of housing stock tied up in an older population. You also know that this is going to be some really fascinating numbers to drop in this conversation. But the average person leaves their home to go to assisted living or some other non-home place around the age of 81 to 84. Boomers are 62 to 80. That means that population is starting to move into this category over the next 5 years. So this has been the thing. As we look forward, we go, do you start building houses now, especially if you're not going to build affordable houses? And by that, I mean $280,000 to $320,000 homes. If you're not going to build those homes and you're just going to build more higher end homes, then what happens in 4 or 5 years is that you're going to get a release of homes in that higher number bracket as you've been hitting building stock into those. And I think you create another problem. This is the trap. The trap is we have you have people who may want to downsize, older people who may want to downsize from a five-bedroom house to a one or two. You have millennial or even now maybe Z couples trying to buy a home who are looking for an entry-level home in that 240 to 280, 300,000 range, and no one building them. So we can sit there all day long and go, we have a housing shortage. And I'm like, well, you don't have a stock shortage. You have stock. What you don't have is the stock that matches the kind of
But
person you
you,
wish would buy a house right now. And I don't see any way possible that you escape that. I don't think people who zone these houses will let you build them. I think the people who are building their tax revenue through the future do not want you building those kind of homes. We are locked in this. And I just don't see how we can get out of that.
there's also a shortage for senior housing because there's a whole wave of seniors coming into that housing.
They're coming down as
And
this other group's coming
yeah,
up. And they're all looking for
yep,
the same property. And that's what
uh-huh.
we don't build.
Yep. Yeah, they're not building a bunch of more senior centers, or there are building some, but they're not. I was talking to someone who does that uh, area of deals with seniors and getting them into housing and assisted living type places. And he goes, he just sees a huge shortage coming up, and it's like if seniors don't get into those houses now while they're 65, when they turn 80, when they want to do it, there won't be any available.
So what's
Well,
really remarkable is if you go back to prior to the pandemic and you go to now, employment was already kind of flagging a little bit in nursing homes. And now it's down. You sit there and you go, wait a minute, we have a greater proportion of our society that is aged now than we've ever had. So how could it be that nursing home employment would be down? Well, we had a lot of, ones shut down and everything. Well, what was happening is that's really expensive. A lot of people were trying to switch care more towards either assisted living or home. And so you
Hmm.
look at assisted living, and it was doing okay until as far as we were adding asylees, as far as we were adding people who could work in those kind of places, or let me say would want to work in those places, they were doing pretty well. When we started cracking down on that at the beginning of last year, you see the employment in assisted living start to take a hit. So that was really a labor force that they could get that now wasn't available anymore. And we have this huge problem. I can build you an assisted living facility, but how am I going to find health aides? How am I going to find care aides, personal
Hmm.
aides, if that is the most in-demand job in this country right now and projected to be to 2034? We have to fill something like 700,000 of these jobs on a net basis or 700,000 each year. And no one wants to do it because it pays like 38,000 a year. I mean, that is another industry that's just trapped. We know the demand's there. But what we don't know is what would we do if we get these
so
facilities?
they're saying that, or I've read that there are more hospitals being built than they can staff also.
It's
And
insane.
it
Everybody,
is
every
insane.
hospital I know is expanding.
Yeah. And so in healthcare, by the way, in this latest jobs report, my understanding, and you will certainly know better than I, healthcare has really kind of led the charge as far as job creations, but it pulled off of that in the last jobs report. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out going forward. And I had asked you before we, earlier today, I want to have a conversation about demographics because we know that the population decline, people are having less babies, and they have for, decades. So this is,
1971.
pardon me?
1971 was the last year we had a break even 2.1.
And not
So
just in
yes,
the
a long
US,
time.
but in other parts of the
Yeah,
all over
all
the
Around the
place,
developed
world.
right?
nations. All
Yep.
So,
developed
okay,
nations.
so with all that
Russia,
being said,
Japan.
so I'm watching this call for more housing, and again, there's always the question of, okay, housing shortage or affordable housing shortage, and then how do you define affordability, and then how do you reconcile the average car payment in the US is $725 a month or something like that, and then
Mm,
do that times two, and then how much for daycare and how much, you know what
yeah,
I
of
mean? And we don't cook at home
course.
anymore. Everyone eats out. And that has gone through,
Gosh.
it just like goes on and on, right? So,
Yes.
how do we, so how do our demographics look, say, in 5 or 10 years versus today? Let's like, and do we
Yeah.
really need to be building more housing? And also in the parts of the country where a lot of housing has been built in the last few years, those are the, in the South or
Yeah.
where there is space for that and people were moving there, doesn't that may or may not continue. And now we have some gluts in some of those areas where things aren't moving like they would, you would think. So talk us through all that, please.
Yeah, I think let's go to the first thing. So first things first, to 2036, the way the last census projections worked out, to 2036, what you're going to see is a 12 million increase in our over 65 population. At the same time, we're going to see an 8 million decline in our under 24 population. So you're getting this rapidly expanding group demographic that would need care, would be probably departing homes or anything like that. At the exact same time that people who would be entering a labor force to take care of those people or would be buying their assets is literally evaporating. This is the last, 26 was the last break even year for high school grads. Starting after this year, the number of high school grads in this country is going to start dropping pretty dramatically. And it really
Really?
starts to become exponential from this point. So if you start to flash forward to like 2035, what you start to envision is that you could have a ridiculously dumped on housing market. I mean, kind of would be like China, where people would be like, I've got all of these properties that I'm investing in, but there's no one living in any of these things. How in the world can you expect them to appreciate if the demand drops off that dramatically? So this is an issue as well, because if you're building homes right now, who, because of their square footage and the features that are in them, are truly a $750,000 house. And you start to say, well, let's say these houses get flooded, and now your strike price drops to like 300,000 or so. I mean, that's an enormous amount of value lost. Somebody is taking a bath somewhere. Now, it could be a person that just passed away, but their family, is taking that bath or something. But you do look at that and say, uh, if we were to put that many homes in the market and everybody tried to sell them at the same time, you would see a price collapse, especially if people are like, look, I got to get rid of this thing. We're not there now. Could we be there by 2030? Maybe. I think it's still a little early because, like I said, boomers are 62 to 80. I think we need to see that group moving more into that mid 80s thing before you start to see a true sell off. But, I think you are going to start to see the front end of that because no matter how we want to paint it, no matter how awful it sounds to say it, the average lifespan is still sitting around 78. So you are going to lose that top end of the boomers. You're going to start seeing those numbers evaporate. If they didn't have children, by the way, 40 million homes in the US are owned by one person. It's this person living alone now. That number has grown absolutely
Wow.
astronomically in the past 2 decades. So, do they have children? Is there anybody they leave this house to? If not, the house goes to market. And so what happens to these people as this continues? The fact that we have 26 or 27% of our homes owned by people over 65, what happens if they start to depart those homes? That's an unbelievable share of homes owned by those people. If they start to divest themselves of those properties, they dump an enormous amount onto the market. And it's not too far off. It's just not
Yeah.
now, which probably makes, if anybody wants to buy a house, is hoping it would be right now. But I'm sorry that these people aren't dead yet. We'll just say it like it's still going to be.
Well, the other
So we
thing
still have
too
to go
is,
through some things first. But I
Wow.
think you
Usually
have to look
I'm
at
the
it like
person
that.
saying the thing that is like,
well, I was having this conversation with someone right before the show about how a lot of the foreclosures are not where people can't afford to make their mortgage payment; it's where someone dies, and there's no heirs,
That's
and
right.
there's therefore the bank is the one left holding the bag, and that they just do the foreclosure process. They take the property at just pennies on the dollar, and they turn around, they sell it. But as we get older and there's fewer children behind us, there's going to be
That's right.
more of that where people are just expiring in their homes and no one knows and cares because they don't have family. And how many single family, you said 40 million people
Yeah,
live
40 million homes are owned by a single person.
wow, that's
And
phenomenal.
I'd have to find it in my deck, but there is an astounding number of people just basically 5, 10 years ago, the amount of people who are over like 55 uh, living alone has gone up. It's like 20 million. And there are, because, like I said, there were so few people, or I should say, what's happened with birth rates. This is something we got to make sure everybody understands. Birth rates for people who have children, people are still having children who have children at around the same numbers that have always been. It's just so many more people don't have children. Okay, that's why our birth rate number has been declining. That's an important thing for everybody to understand. It's not that somebody who was having three children is having one, it's that so many more people are having zero than used to have some. So if that's the case, if that's what's been happening over the past several decades, then yes, you are more a more and more situation. Because I have heard people say, well, it's not going to be a problem because all these people are just going to they'll inherit those, their parents' homes. And it's like, no, they
No,
won't,
they're not.
because in
There's no one
history
there.
we've never seen that many properties
Yeah,
without a proper heir.
right. But this is not just a U.S. problem. This is a world
Oh
problem. In
no,
fact,
it's
U.S.
definitely not a
Yeah,
US
and
problem.
the U.S. is probably in one of the better shapes around the world. I think U.S., France, one other one that's okay. Mexico is okay, um, but like Japan is leading edge of
Oh yeah.
dying out, and Japan has two problems. Was number one that they're not having kids. Number two, they're not bringing in new residents into the country. They shun anybody who's not like if you visit Japan and you think about moving there, heard the story so many times. Like, well, yeah, we love having you here, but when you're going home, um, and so it's a problem, and it's what happens when there's no the demographics. China is a terrible demographic problem where, and it's all because of industrialization that people they moved off the farm where kids were free labor and they had as many as they could to do the slave labor to working in an industry where they jammed as many people into an apartment as they could to make as much money as they could, and kids are a problem in that situation, so they didn't have any. Plus there's also lots of birth control options that have appeared since the 60s, and it's just kind of went around the world. This is what's happening. We are going to be shrinking, and it's going to be a problem for around the world and until we figure it
So
out.
So here's an important thing to know as well. So Japan, I believe, down around 6 million since its peak since 2009. But Tokyo's population's grown.
Yep.
Okay. So we call that urbanization. So as
Hmm.
brain drain occurs in these remote areas, you can't get healthcare anymore. You can't get anybody to hook up your internet. You move to these cities. And I think this is something that's been interesting in the US because when the pandemic hit, you saw a lot of people go remote and they started trying to move out to these more remote areas. And we all know, especially if you ever lived in the DC area, people won't, there's no place out far enough that they won't move. Like they'll go into West Virginia, take a 2.5 hour train ride to get to work just to try to avoid these things. But if you start to imagine if what Japan's seeing is, which is what Italy's seeing, this drying up of the countryside, whole towns now gone, where people
Hmm.
just, the young people moved out, the old people either passed off or passed gone, or they moved to the cities. And I think you are going to see more and more of that. But this takes place over time. It's not going to be tomorrow. But you do start to look, I've heard people talk about, well, housing stock. The housing stock, you can't use the whole number because the housing stock's not that great. And I'm like, well, if you're going to say the housing stock's not that great, are you talking about all of these, rural areas where the homes aren't really being upkept? Because, yeah, you're right that those no one's going to be buying those homes anyway. They're going to be trying to, to move into these suburban areas or urban areas to maintain or to get a
Hmm.
house or something like that, then that part is true. But I think this has been happening. I we had a farm up in Pennsylvania that used to be a coal area.
Uh-huh.
Now it's not. It's sad. It's sad what it
Yeah,
is.
and
And
all the miners are gone.
yeah, all miners are gone. That
Yep.
happens. Societies transform. The only
Yep.
difference is that in the past, societies transformed with growth. They were adding to their population.
Right.
Now, we don't believe that that can sustain itself into the 2030s.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
No,
I have brought this up multiple times with economists, and I cannot seem to get them interested in this conversation. But our entire economy since the Industrial Revolution has been based on growth. And the idea that we are going to continue to grow, and every quarter we're going to have better numbers, and it's going to get bigger, bigger, bigger. Our
it,
our economy is 70%, people spending money.
Consumer spending.
That's
mhm.
Yeah.
consumer
Yep.
spending. So when we have this conversation, I go back to we are going to need to revise our economy and change the way that we do things and look at things at some
Yeah.
point.
One
And
I've
do
been
big
we
problem
saying
with
it
just
for
that.
years.
ignore it? Do we just ignore it until it blows up in
Yeah.
our face? Because that's what it seems like to me. But I
This
think
is
that
it.
we need and this is in the mortgage industry, I see it big time because again, we have all these companies that it's all about volume. It's all about quarterly earnings, going IPO. How many corporate jets do I have? How much money am I making? And they completely lost sight of the consumer. They don't want to admit it, but that's exactly what happened. And so I believe that we should have a refocus on the core, which is the person who is buying a home and needs a home and that's what we should be focused on. Obviously, I can't get any buy-in on this from anyone in the positions of we have to report to our, investors, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we reconcile all this going forward? I don't know what the fix is or how it's going to correct itself.
There isn't one because all economic systems, not just ours, need more youth coming in than uh, are dying on the back
But
end.
Kevin, the whole point is that is no longer happening. Let's face it.
I
And
understand that.
let's recalibrate and figure out how we're going to go forward and deal with
Well,
reality versus history and what
yeah,
is going to
Japan
keep us
Japan
moving
is a
forward.
leading Japan is a
Yeah.
leading edge on that. They're coming up
So,
with robots and stuff like that. So yeah, go
yeah.
ahead, Ron.
Yeah, there's wow, lots of arms and legs here. So first things first, the native born population in the US, people born here, is projected to invert in 2030. Okay. So that was originally projected to happen in 2039, but this is what always happens with population estimates is people really are overly optimistic. You see this even when people talk about the overpopulation of the earth, I mean, they missed it so tremendously. Like we still have people afraid of that. I think some people probably still afraid of it now. There's a much bigger issue going on, and that is a depopulation and kind of where this growth occurs. So, after, where we're kind of heading is the only continent in the world that's probably going to be growing in a good 10, 15 years is going to
Hmm.
be Africa. It's only 4% of global GDP. So they're not buying anything. They're not going to bail you out if you're like, how am I going to keep getting my exponential increases? Well, you're not going to be selling there. Most developed nations are inverting, at inversion, or about to invert. So Japan's inverted.
Yep.
Russia's inverting, China's inverting, Korea's in it, the process, Germany, Italy. These are all inverting or about to invert economies. And we are also, on a native born side, facing that as well. If you look at the population estimates of the US and what was projected to grow, keep us growing after 2030 was all immigration. But in that is something that people don't understand. That immigration, those immigration numbers would not be people coming in with high paying jobs. These would be people coming in to do, the $20
Medium
an
work.
hour jobs, So
Yep.
they're not going to be contributing a lot to the economy as far as purchasing large things like, I don't know, AI or other things that you're spending trillions of dollars building because that's not what we're growing anymore. The financial sector, and I've been saying this a long time about the IT and the financial sector. We have a tendency to look back at these growth things, these hyper growth things that happened in the 80s, the 90s when the internet came out. kind of exploded during that time in the 2000s. That was at a time that the boomers were swelling at the highest purchasing power years of their lives. This was a wealthy generation with unprecedented wealth accumulation, buying the latest things, the latest cars and everything. And that generation is now aging out. And the generations behind it are smaller and arguably, not as wealthy, even though the data kind of points that they are doing pretty well. Maybe I don't think they're going to be in a position to take the asset prices that we've accumulated. So if this is the case, if we are looking at these things that, at best we break even, and just so you know, the labor force in the US right now is down about 1.4 million year over year. So that's 1.4 million less consumers. Now, part of that is a population adjustment that we knew was coming, but that's still real. A lot of this is due to combination of asylee deportations, and then of course retirements and the way this is kind of working out. But if that is the case, if I'm down 1.4 million in a labor force, that's 1.4 million people who are no longer earning a check that they're going to spend at a level that they once did. And this is kind of the expectation of where we're kind of heading, into the future is at best you break even, at worst you go down. So if that's the case, and I'm a company that, hey, invest in the market, you get a 7% return every year, maybe more, then you start to go, but how are you doing that? And I've heard people like, well, we'll just export more. I'm like, okay, let me just make sure I
To
can
who?
reset everything. The entire global, all developed countries in the world are about at inversion. So we don't
Hmm.
have the expansion that you had in the 2000s to justify the kind of investments we're making right now. Those no longer exist. You're selling into an economy where people are going to be facing less demand. So I've heard people say this about AI so many times. They're like, you're going to see this subtraction of people because companies are going to spend their money on AI that they would have spent on payrolls. And I'm like, that's hilarious. Money? What money? Like there's what money are you imagining that they're going to have? I'm like, first off, the population is this a consuming population is probably going to be stuck. It's not going to be growing. If they get let go of any workers, that only exacerbates the problem. That's even less people making money, which means they're going out of business. So they won't be spending any money on it, let alone think what's in this number, 2.5 trillion. So in order to meet the financial obligations of the AI industry, they have to be making 2.5 trillion by 2030-ish. And so they're not even close. Obviously, they're a mere tiny fraction of that now, and they probably can't grow much more than that because this isn't the 2000s anymore. It's not 1990s anymore. This is a very different world. So it kind of begs the question, what are we doing? Because it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense that you would throw an unprecedented amount of money thinking you're going to get an unprecedented amount of return when there's not an unprecedented demand. There is a very low level of demand that we see coming in the next 10 years, especially when they say, I mean, our level of growth in our labor force in the 2020s equals what we had in the 1950s. We're much bigger now. And then that's projected to invert in the 2030s.
Hmm.
So what are we doing? Like doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
So, so first of all, as far as the boomers' wealth, that wealth is going to transfer to either their heirs or it's
Yep.
going somewhere. So it's not going away. So the
Right.
idea that we're losing these boomers and therefore we lose all their assets and all their wealth, et cetera, that to me, I don't understand how that makes any sense. So can you talk us through that a little bit? I mean, that wealth is going
Sure.
to remain somewhere in the economy.
Yeah, so this is an important part as well. So what happens is we have a tendency to look at wealth as distributed when a lot of boomer wealth is actually still concentrated in a certain portion of the economy, is a certain portion of the population. So the inheritance aspect of what they said is the amount of money that's out there, the average person would inherit something like 1.2 to $2 million. Okay. And I've had a lot of people tell me, I'm like, well, I'm not getting 1.2 to 2 million. I'm like, you don't understand. Your 1.22 million is going to a person who's inheriting 10 million. Okay. So when the
Okay.
BLS is projecting that the labor force participation rate, which has already been on a free fall, is actually going to continue to decline, the reason why they're saying that is you don't need everyone to receive a large inheritance to make this thing drop. You need a certain percentage, 5%, 10%, to receive a large number for them to also leave the labor force early. And that's what we expect is there will be transitions of large amounts into specific populations. but there will be a large percentages that maybe end up getting left with debt. They're not only not going to be getting anything, they'll be getting left with debt. So the people who have the larger sums are probably already in larger sums. So they themselves are maybe they still work regardless of that or how they manage it. But the whole thing is if you truly don't have heirs, if you truly have no one to give your money to, then your options were you already allocated that money before you died, or you die with money. And when you die with money, yes, that money actually stays in locations where it's at. It does not get the banks don't go, oh, Fred died, left $3 million behind. We're going to find everybody and give them all 3 million people and give them all $1. Like the money is taken taken in unless there's a claim on it. It usually gets stuck in courts for forever as people try to make claims on it. But it's not free money. It's not being spent in that time. So yeah, that's kind of going to be an interesting thing to follow as we go forward.
So my single clients who have assets are planning to leave them to nieces, to nephews,
Sure.
to, there's someone in their family that they're going to leave them to. I actually had a conversation with someone the other day who made the mistake of adding some family members to title on a property a couple of years ago, and it's really bitten her in the hiney recently.
Don't do that.
And I said, and she said, well, maybe, if this happens, then I'll just give it to my nephews now. I'm like, no, can you stop yourself? I said, every time you're about to make some decision like that, I want you to call me and we're going to talk it through. And then I'm going to tie your hands to the chair so you can't sign something, just in a moment of generosity, because it hurts her ultimately. This has ended up costing her
Hmm.
so much money. It's crazy. So anyway, so that's
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing. So we have a question here. Please talk about the impact of boomers in the stock market as they need money to live.
Not, I saw the question. I'm not exactly sure if I understand it. So,
Well, I
as far
think
as
the
the
point
stock
is you're
market right
taking
now is
money.
making
You're
of us all successful. I mean, I'm not going to
Yeah.
cry when I look at my balance. Now, if this AI thing pops as it really wish it would do now, just so I can start to recalibrate what's actually going on, then that would obviously reset things. Now, in historical times when you've had corrections, sometimes if they're violent enough and you didn't save enough, then you end up having to work again. Otherwise, you ride that out and understand that if something busts, all ships move down pretty much equally.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to still survive because everybody has less, and all of a sudden the things you couldn't afford, everybody else is in the same boat that you're in. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that's the way I kind of look at the market. And I even kind of look at it with my own holdings as I look at it and I think, last time I was with my financial advisor, I'm like, I'm not totally crazy about the companies I'm invested in because if this whole AI thing, takes the hit, wow, that's going to be a pretty awful number. And then it's basically you have to understand, look, well, that's what most of the market is invested in. So yeah, we all take a collective universal bath together. Does that put us in a depression? Well, you have to understand that wealth accumulation now is literally not in the same stratosphere as we were in 1930. Very few people had college degrees. Most people were doing manual labor. It didn't take much to wipe out your life savings when your life savings were several $1,000s. I think we're a little bit better positioned now. But yeah, I mean, we're not immune from economic shocks. Anything can happen.
I
Yeah.
think
I
he
think
might have
that.
been asking about if
Ooh.
as they take money out of the market to pay their living expenses,
Okay, so
which
Yeah.
are
that's a
Because
expensive.
great question. Sorry, and that is a great question. That we're a little bit surprised we haven't seen as much of this so far because retirements are absolutely skyrocketing. In case you're not following the numbers, we're expecting 20 million more people on Social Security by 2035. I mean, we have added as many people to Social Security in the past 5 years as what took us like 19 years to do from, going way back to 2000. Like, it's an astounding thing to see how many people are doing this. So what we've been expecting is we thought more people were going to liquidate out. And yet the market obviously is doing very well. So what I think is happening is people are enticed by, well, not yet. So what you're afraid of there is the chain reaction. So if things do start to take, if a bubble starts to occur, then these people who are like trying to squeeze every last dollar, even if they were 72, 75 years old, trying to see how much more they could kind of grow their nest egg, would all at that time pull. So that's the housing market, right? In 2000, what, 8, 9, or whatever. At the time, everybody was buying these investment properties. Everything goes belly up. All these things hit the market at the same time. People take an absolute bath. We could see that there was a bubble forming in housing, and I think it's naive for everybody to say like, I never saw it. Like I saw it. I talked
Yeah,
about
I
it a
saw it.
lot.
Yeah.
6 months before, I was like, this is going to blow up like catastrophically. And yet, so many people held on to the very, very end. And I think that's what you probably would see here as well is we're just not seeing people liquidate to the level we thought. Also, a part of that is if I have a lot of money in the market right now, I'm taking dividends, I'm taking other things. Like I'm probably meeting my financial needs without having to take a significant amount of money out of that. Um, and okay, senior care is an important part of this as well. So this is so long-term care. That's an aspect that we're dealing with as well. Um, the other aspect of that is will long-term care become my kids are going to take care of me in their house and I'll avoid those costs? Or do you try to just have an attendant come to your house until you pass? I saw something the other day that this guy, financial advisor, was saying how few people he recommends long-term care to. He goes, look, if you don't have a history of like Alzheimer's or thing in your family, he goes, we really don't recommend it and this is a horrible thing to say, because most people don't make it long enough to justify the expense.
Is that
Um,
true?
Yeah, yeah, because it's not cheap.
it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a lot there. There is a lot there. Um, but this will be a very interesting aspect of the next 5 years. I had been speaking about this for several years that we used to be so concerned about childcare, but now we have so many fewer babies that what's happening now is it's elder care and people
Hmm.
having to leave the labor force because of that. When I talk about the average person says they're going to retire at 66, but the average person actually retires at 62. Now, a lot of that is healthcare reasons, usually for themselves, but increasingly, if you
Hmm.
think about it, somebody who's around 60, 62 years old could be absolutely dealing with a parent who's in their mid 80s. And now they're having to drop out to take care of them. And I think you are going to absolutely see a lot more of that, especially if you don't have a long-term care policy or any other backstop. You are the long-term care policy.
I would rather chew on glass than retire at 62. That sounds awful. I mean,
Doesn't
I,
sound
I
awful
think
to me.
I think that
You
is
don't
so
golf, apparently.
it's so young. It is so young to stop being productive. And
Yeah.
now some people retire and go into something else and do something else. But I do believe that everybody really does need a reason to get up in the morning and feel like they accomplished something when they go to bed at night. And we're all better off and healthier if that's the case. So uh okay.
Can I real
So
quick? Somebody had a question about Social Security.
yep.
I put a post on this on LinkedIn a little while ago, and this is really a global thing. There are only two solutions that can happen. Either you pay out way less. Um, what is it? There's two. You either pay out less or you get a smaller, oh gosh, or you wait way longer to you distribute earnings or when you're
Yeah.
eligible for earnings or anything. So this is an interesting aspect of where we are right now. The wealth effect that we have generated by the boomers has made it so a lot of them don't need Social Security. And so
Hmm.
when the government keeps raising the age to like, what is it, 70, which kicks
So
in,
67 is like,
moving to 70
yeah.
soon. So the point of that is you're not going to get full Social Security until you're like 70. But a lot of these people who retire young don't really care. Like they don't need it because
Yep.
you had dual income households. Sometimes both of
Yep.
these people college degreed for a lifetime for the first time in human history. So the
Hmm.
accumulation of earnings during that time is something that's never been witnessed in our lifetimes or any lifetime. So that's something that the government keeps trying to say, well, wait, we can keep people off of this, but that still doesn't keep some people from retiring anyway. But there is, in my mind, there's absolutely no way that a single social security system or like whatever it's called in France or anything else, there's absolutely no way that it can stay solvent at what its current commitments are. It couldn't possibly happen. You don't have, the amount of people contributing into this that we once had. How this all ends up, what happens to that? I have absolutely no idea. Somebody did a tremendous video on YouTube where they really kind of broke it down, and they were just saying how politically unpopular it is to take, to anything you try to do, especially in like Europe, it causes riots, and they're like, but you don't understand, like it's not there. Money's not going to be there. It's in some cases it's not there now. I don't know what you do. I mean, I think we've been told, right? all of us on this call, I mean, I'm in my late 50s. We were told when I was 20 that Social Security was going to be insolvent by the time I was
Yep.
35, and
Yep.
yet it's
I
still
was told the
here.
same thing.
So somehow we keep figuring out a way to make this work. I don't know how
Yeah.
we do it.
I know people who had children later in life and they are able to draw on Social Security and still have children under the age of 18 who are worth tens of millions, maybe more than that, who are drawing on Social Security for their underage children, which is their right, but it doesn't help the situation when you
No,
have that going on. And so we've created a scenario where it takes something that seems like a nice idea, but doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the bigger picture, right?
it's
So
a weird world, right? We don't have pensions anymore. We Social Security may not make it another 8 to 10 years. Certainly not to a full. You're not going to get a full payout. You'll get something less than that. All those things seem to hit at the same time. So it's really like we did this thing where we said we created 401ks, we created Roth, like with the intention that you were going to be saving your butt off when you were younger. And if you're like, no, I'll do that later,
Hmm.
maybe looking at your parents or other people are like, well, they were able to retire. It's like, no, that's not the world you live in anymore. Like that's 12% of people are, I believe, eligible for a pension in the U.S. economy right now.
yeah. Well, and also we also have to think about the idea that even if we don't have Social Security, are we really going to let our older people die in the gutter?
No,
You know, and we're not. So we're going to backstop it one way or another. It's just going to again,
more
it is
debt.
so it it is well, I mean, don't even get us started. You know, we have a comment here, the national debt's close to 40 trillion. And so what yeah, I just feel like the political situation just in its entirety, not one side or the other, keeps us from having real solutions. We don't have people who work
100%.
together. They're all working to their own interests. And at some point, we just run out of money and options, and we're something will happen, but it
Watch
may not be
Japan.
the choice we want because we didn't deal with it when we could. So
Yeah.
it is really oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, just want to remind everyone that the new condo rules kicked in. Make sure you're letting your realtors and your borrowers understand that. Make sure that when you have somebody who is looking at condos, they understand what the process is.
I mean,
The
like the reserve cap's going from 10% to 15, and
That's not till January. I'm talking
uh,
about the full review now, no limited review. Although we did talk about this before, if you have 10 or fewer units in your condo association, you may be eligible for something less than a full review. And it just falls under the it depends category, as so many things do in our industry. So, Ron, it's funny because I was planning to take a little traipse down memory lane because when I see posts that you post on LinkedIn, I will copy the link and I will email it to myself and then put your name on it. So when I went to go look for your post this morning, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many. We covered a lot of it. People, he is very prolific on LinkedIn. Follow him. It's interesting. You always have an interesting point of view. I just quickly wanted to cover and just, I mean, like really quickly, but the AI thing, which you have been very vocal about, and we've seen such a huge arc in what's happening in that over the last,
Mhm.
whatever, 2 years or so,
Yeah.
especially. But I'm seeing companies who had let go a lot of their older workers bring them back because
Hmm.
they're realizing that that's not working. I don't know if the mortgage business is going to get the memo ahead of time or if they're going to have to, fall on their faces first. So
Yeah.
talk us through that a little bit and whether you think that's a trend or tell us.
Yeah. So it's important to know that the two biggest, AI model companies are, if anybody doesn't know, they're extremely unprofitable. And they have been in a case where they've been trying to say that this is the greatest thing ever because the amount of cash they needed to raise was unprecedented. So in saying all of this FOMO stuff, you had companies who were, just scrambling and just jamming AI in and going, we got to, we're going to pay for this, we're going to do this thing. And they just, people who didn't understand the technology at all were making a lot of really quick decisions. That happens with every technology, just so everybody understands that's
Yep.
the case. Okay. It happened again. So you had all these people do this, and then they found out like it doesn't really do the things that you thought it does, and it still needs supervision and it makes mistakes. And it's an app. It's assistive for certain jobs. It's better than others. Its capabilities, even if they're good, there's been a lot of IT for the past 30 years that's been really good, but they've never realized their full potential. So I think what's happening right now is companies are kind of like, okay, we threw it at everything. It didn't really help here. In fact, it hurt here. We're not getting any ROI. It is expensive if it's charged at the actual price that they need to charge. So they're kind of putting these things together and going, okay, we kind of need to bring some people back to at least to, excuse me, watch over this technology as we're implementing it and everything. I think this is a life cycle for what, software is. And as much as people keep trying to make AI more than what it is, it's software. It goes on computers. People keep saying it's the next revolution. I'm like, no, it's another software program that goes on computers. We're still in the last revolution. It's just LLMs. Large language models are just an extension. We've had them since 2015. And I think all of this is because the hype necessary to keep these valuations is so extraordinary that the claims are so audacious. And every day somebody puts a new crazy fear-mongering thing out there because they need you to think, this is world changing. What they don't understand is, well, okay, so it changes the world. What does it change? Does it remove jobs? Well, that would be catastrophic. That would end the economy. And you're built on debt, so you're gone. AI companies, because you need people to pay off your bills, and you wouldn't have those people anymore. All these other things that they say, at the end of the day, application software is done, and if it's meant to bring about something, it needs to bring about a product. It needs to bring about something to get ROI. And people are like, well, efficiency. I'm like, efficiency is the lamest kind of ROI. The best kind of ROI is I used it to develop a product that's now making me, tens of millions of dollars, and I can justify the expense. Not, hey, I wrote an email for me quicker than I normally write. No one,
Right.
that's dumb. Like that's a huge waste of basically now what 1.5 trillion in investments that we've dumped into this thing. So I think we're still feeling our way out. I'm glad to see, last year I was the most vocal person out there about this is a joke. Like, stop believing all these prognostications. They're ridiculous. Like, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Now, even the AI company's like, all right, yeah, so there's not going to be a jobs apocalypse. I'm like, well, duh. I mean, we knew that. Doesn't mean it's not useful. Doesn't mean we won't find a
Right.
home for it. But people have to understand it takes a long time to find homes for technologies. Like, where are they best at? All of these things.
Yep.
It's going to take a long time, and there's going to be new jobs that are created in
Just
that time. And if they can truly generate a new product, you will need to hire people for that product. The AI is not
yeah.
going to go sell it. The AI is not going to go, build up its networks. It's going to just do these things that you're asking. So, I've never been a believer in all of the nonsense. I'm definitely still not a believer in it. I am very concerned that they think they can make this huge amount of money from an application. I think it
Yeah.
was Ed Zetron said today, like they're basically saying that they can make in 3 or 4 years way more than Azure Cloud and all these other things that have been around for 20 years, building books of business, based on extensive plays into so many critical things. So like LLMs aren't even close to that level. So
So you're saying sell your stocks now.
well, you sell at some point, right? The question is, when do you sell? I mean, we're all kind of in this game together playing, chicken with our
Yep.
money because no one wants to pull before this, before they
I
can
know
see
it keeps.
the
I the
market's
same
going up
thing. Yep.
today.
Yep.
And, you have the big tech companies reported these great earnings, but what they didn't tell you is the way they achieve these great earnings is they give money to these model building companies and then take that money back as because these people are using that money to buy their products and they count that as revenue. And it's like, I mean, it's kind of dirty. It's a dirty game. But at some point, they're gonna have to pay for all this stuff.
Well, it's interesting too. In the tech world, I'm hearing about pushback from people who I don't think they were paying for a lot of these
Yeah,
sort resources for a long time, and now they have to.
right.
And so now, people are being questioned, how come you use this many hours of Claude or whatever, system
Tokens.
they're using,
Yeah.
tokens, that's it. Thank you. Anyway, so okay, we are way over. We are so appreciative that you were here today. We absolutely adore you. Thank you so, so much for all the great information. And, again, it just comes back to we on the ground need to know these things so we can help our borrowers make good decisions. But ultimately, everyone needs a place to live. That's it. And how do we focus on that? How do we help our borrowers? How do we help the consumer? And yeah, stop trying to worry about next quarter earnings. So anyway, with all that being said, thank you very, very much. Everyone, go get a loan. They're out there. They're tough. That's why we're important. We will see you next week. Thank you. Bye, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye. See
Ron.
you all. Thank you.
See you
Bye.
guys.